here we are, folks. We've come a long way, some 650 registrants from what was going to be an in real life event to virtual tonight. I hope you have your Girls in Tech cheese platter DIY inspired on your lap. But those that are veterans to our program, a big warm welcome back and a huge hello and welcome to anyone that's new to joining us this evening. We are Girls in Tech and we're an international not-for-profit. We're a part of a global organisation that has 50 city chapters worldwide and over 60,000 members. We were founded in 2007 in San Francisco by Adriana Gascoigne, and now here in Australia, we're a fair few thousand strong. We have a passion for building an inclusive and diverse tech workforce. And here at GIT Australia, we host a number of events, workshops, hackathons, and other educational and networking experiences and opportunities year-round. If you haven't already, please follow, like, share this event on our socials, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. Join our mailing list for updates of future events. And if you're interested in volunteering, please stay tuned later on for some information about that. Speaking of our volunteers, as I said, we're a not-for-profit and we couldn't be here today without all the volunteers that support us in making these events happen. So a big shout out to Vanessa, Jamuna, Emma, Deli, and a whole wide range of individuals that helped us move from in real life to virtual and that are here supporting me tonight. We also like to extend a really big thank you to our sponsors, because definitely without them, we could not be here and make this happen for you all. So a big thank you to VMWare, and I'll be handing over to hear a few words from Brad Anderson, who's the Managing Director and Vice President for VMWare in Australia and New Zealand. Over to you, Brad.
Hey, thanks, Christine. Welcome to the Girls in Tech Boss Night. G'day, so Brad Anderson, I lead VMWare in Australia and New Zealand. Real shame that we couldn't be in the office and meet you all sort of face to face, and our plans didn't work out. But it's great to be here tonight, and it's great we could reschedule the event and for all of you tonight to join us virtually. I was just joking in the warm up here that behind me, 6 steps away, is the kitchen. I know a lot of you at home as well. Love you to put up in the chat how far your desk is away from the kitchen. I think in the executive at the office today, I was the equal leader. Working in the kitchen doesn't count, but hey, look, just trying to lighten it up a bit, really trying to do our best with another month ahead of us in Sydney. For all you guys in the other states who are out and about, you've been here no doubt as well. But look, we're trying to keep it light and breezy, but very happy to be here. This is kind of where normally you would have some kind of corporate statement saying that we are committed to, providing equal opportunity, development, salary opportunities, and it is a shining light. VMware actually lives it. I left a long career at another place and I've been here a year. I am immensely proud to sponsor tonight. VMware lives and breathes diversity, inclusion, empathy. It is a kind business and I am stoked to be here. My 2 daughters may drop in a second here. I can hear them sort of scheming in the background. But one of the things that sort of hit me when I first started, yes, we're a big US tech company. Tech for good is what we do. And I'm really, really happy to say, an example of that is, pay parity since 2016 in Australia and New Zealand in VMware. We don't look for, sort of the badges that say, what we're doing. We're just doing it and living it. These sort of forums, and some amazing sort of women, talented women like Roz and Kath, who will join us as part of the panel tonight. It just is in our DNA. So I encourage you all, us all, to sort of evangelize and drive this sort of change into every part of the world, really. Tonight we're going to hear from Roz, from Catherine, from Marina and Ben on the chances they took, the risks, and really the things that didn't take in their careers and how they got through them. Really it's about sharing, it's about understanding, and sort of lessons learned, of course. But look, I want to introduce Catherine Rodriguez. Thanks for your intro. My intro, Catherine is the APAC Strategic Alliances Manager at Adobe, board member of Girls in Tech Australia. And I'm going to hand back to you to introduce and to moderate our panel. Have a great night. I'll just look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad. And again, thank you to VMware. So just to get started, I'm going to cover up tonight's format. So we're going to do a quick introduction to our panelists and a little icebreaker question I've given them. Then we're going to have a deep dive discussion. And our topic for today is around biggest learnings, as Brad said, and what chances did or did not take to land you in your dream career, which most of these guys do have. I've had the privilege of being able to interview them beforehand, and I'm telling you the time we have is not enough to get through the amazing achievements that they have for their whole careers, but we'll do our best. At the end, we'll have a brief Q&A, so please continue to pop your questions into the chat window and they'll get filtered to me. Now, let's just kick it right off. Let's just go straight into it. I'm going to probably start with you, Roz. So can you just let us know your name, where you're from, which company, your role, and something that you still enjoy or do enjoy doing during lockdown? I'll give you a little tip. I started clay modeling literally about 3 days ago, which is like adult Play-Doh for me. And that keeps me occupied for about 2-3 hours at a time. So kicking over to you, Roz, and then we'll get started with the other speakers.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely some more discussion we can dig into there. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here again. My name is Roz Gregory. I look after transformation services for Tanzu at VMware across Asia Pacific. Just what does that mean? We just help enterprise customers change the way they deliver new experiences to their customers. And if you think about something like Service New South Wales, and I hope all of you have had a chance to have a look at either the digital driver's license or vouchers, or you've probably been dealing with a COVID app check-in lately, that's the sort of thing that we're talking about, changing those experiences. So I'm very lucky I get to work with those sorts of companies on that transformation journey. And my lockdown joy at the moment is baking. I am baking everything under the planet, which my kids love. I'm not quite sure about my waistline, which is why I'm bringing it real and keeping my activewear on for tonight. Thanks, Christine.
Okay. Catherine, let's kick over to you.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I look after APJ. I look after the TAM team. So TAM stands for Technical Account Management Team. So we're the embedded resource that sit with our customers to help them actually leverage the technology that they've purchased. So we're about realizing the promise that is made at sale. We're about actually delivering that. And I look after teams from Japan through to New Zealand. I am, by the way, if you can tell by the accent, I'm a Kiwi, but I'm based here in Sydney. And I've been at VMware now for about 8 months. So that's me from a career perspective. In terms of what my partner came up with, what do I like doing when in lockdown? I'm going to keep it clean and go with actually riding a bike. So you will find me riding a bike at any time, whether we're in lockdown or not. I'm lucky enough to have an electronic setup with a computer, and I live in a virtual world and ride my bike there instead of riding it out on the road at the moment.
Cool. Let's kick over to Ben.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ben King. So I work at Finder, which is a comparison website. So we compare everything from kind of home loans to credit cards to energy deals. You've probably heard our annoying jingle on television. That's what most people say to me anyway. So my role, I'm head of corporate social responsibility and public affairs, kind of two weird functions. So corporate social responsibility is kind of about driving positive social environmental impact through the business. And public affairs is managing our relationships with kind of public policy makers and regulators and all that kind of stuff. So excited to tell you a bit about all of that. But my lockdown activity has also been baking, same as you, Roz, but I'm very proud to say that I've kept a sourdough starter alive since the first lockdown. Not that many people can say that, I don't reckon. But yeah, so I've been baking sourdough all the way through for about a year now. So if you want tips on sourdough, you can also shout out that as well.
I can't wait for you all to send me some baked goods. Irina, over to you.
Thanks, Christine. My name is Irina Feldman. I am Senior Corporate Counsel at Salesforce. I'm also the president of the Women's Network for Australia and New Zealand, which is our internal employee resource group for gender equality. And so in my day job, so to speak, I am on the commercial legal team working with our sales teams as we work to solve problems for our customers and close transactions. And then from a volunteering perspective, the equality group is really focused on essentially what we're doing here with VMware today and Girls in Tech, but within Salesforce. And in terms of my fun COVID lockdown situation, I'm going to take inspiration from Roz and keep it very real, which is there are two versions of it. On a good day, it is taking my dog to the beach to get him in the water and get him swimming. On a not as awesome day, it is really comforting to know that I can order Deliveroo twice a day, and that is also okay. So that is my full scope of lockdown joy.
Lovely. Glad I'm not the only one enjoying a little bit of time out. Now, I want to take a little bit of a time to get to know each of you before we dive right into questions. So I wanted to capture a little bit around just a brief career summary or how you got to where you are today. I think we'll start again with you, Roz. So, how did you get into the role that you're in now on, from start of your career or your journey?
Okay, yeah, great question. I think my route has been very circuitous. I have started and gone broadly into many different roles, mainly in tech, from early stage tech ecosystem in ANZ, right through to working in Europe in partners and alliances, mostly in sales, then into an ASX 100 company to work at actually bringing tech into an enterprise organization, and then flipped back around to go sort of back into work for vendors in selling and implementing tech again. So common theme, but I think the journey for me has been very much around I've always been attracted to broadly getting across all of the aspects of the industry, which is why I took roles in selling software, delivering software, then deploying software, then trying to figure out how to help organizations do all of that, and then ended back in a place where I can sort of work on my strengths. So I think that's a sort of good summary, and sometimes going broad is a good choice, and it has been for me.
Amazing, thank you. Let's go over to Catherine. Can you give us a bit of a summary to where you got to today?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I started my career selling makeup when I was 15. So that was where I actually started. But from a technology perspective, I have, apart from 5 years where I worked for myself when digital was first sort of coming on stream, I've always worked for US-based software companies. So that has been the top end of town in terms of Oracle, IBM, and now in VMware, but also in startup land with Marketo, Telium, etc. For me, technology is always about how can that make businesses be better, be faster, be stronger, be more effective. So I've followed a stream. I'm like Roz as well. I don't think I've followed a career path. And in some ways, I think because IT I grew up as IT grew up, there wasn't a career path. And so I've followed whatever has presented the opportunities in front of me and made decisions as I've gone. I will also say, as a female, I've had one female boss in my whole career. I haven't had a lot of role models out there, but I've had some very, very good male bosses that I have learned a humongous amount from. So for me, as I said, I've been in VMware now for 8 months, and I came from startup into VMware. So it's kind of like from one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of the complexities of some of the solutions. So that's a little bit about me.
Lovely. And is it true that you were a principal at Oracle at, what is it, in your late 20s or mid 20s?
Yeah. Pretty much. I was involved in the original build of CRM. So when CRM came to market just after Salesforce came to market, Oracle actually built their first CRM before they bought Siebel. And I was involved in that, became a principal consultant off the back of that. It was after that I thought, actually, I'm going to go in a different direction. Digital was just sort of raising its head, and I thought, I'm going to follow that track and see where that leads me. And so I jumped off the corporate trail and employed myself for 5 years and worked as a consultant coding PHP. JavaScript was just arriving, etc., working with retailers who wanted to use this new thing called the e-commerce and maybe sell a few things. Never going to take long though.
Very impressive. And for someone that comes from e-commerce, having been at PayPal for 7 years, I can totally respect the early bandwagon jumpers. Irina, do you want to give us a bit of a walkthrough how you started in your career to where you are today?
Sure. So similar, I think a common theme is developing in that it doesn't sound like any of us intended or planned to get to where we are now. it kind of happened through a series of decisions. For me, I went in the US, it's a little different. So I did undergraduate, worked for a year, and then went to law school. And when I was graduating law school, the economy was in the height of the recession. And so the plans that I had kind of made and put forward to progress in terms of going to a big law firm for 5 years and paying off my student debt and then reevaluating what I want to do from that, all of that went very sideways very quickly. And I ended up clerking for a judge for the experience for free during the day and waitressing full-time at night. And then kind of through continuing conversations, ended up getting my first in-house job at a data backup and recovery company. And then from there went to Salesforce in the New York office. And then with Salesforce moved to Sydney. And so I assure you that if not for the recession, I don't think I'd be here right now. So, you know, there's the silver lining there for anyone playing along at home.
Lovely. Ben, let's kick over to you. How did you get to where you are today?
Sure. So similar theme for me as well. I think I did a business degree and then did a fairly standard route out of university in the UK of joining a management consulting firm. Didn't love it. Found it very demotivating and like wasn't hitting the right kind of purpose notes for me. So kind of moved sideways into another consulting firm that specialized in this kind of corporate social responsibility, sustainability kind of space. Use some of that consulting skill set, but on the whole new set of issues and challenges, and just really loved it. And then just over 3 years ago, after 4 or 5 years there, made a decision with my partner to come to Australia. So did the proper backpacker visa route, working holiday visas, tried to find jobs, and was lucky enough to do a few months with IAG, which is a big insurance company here, in a contracting role, and then joined Finder about 2.5 years ago now. So yeah, I've done lots of work with different tech companies through that consulting experience, but yeah, really interesting area. I think as a theme, corporate social responsibility and sustainability has definitely grown with me, kind of in a similar way to what Catherine was talking about. Like it's definitely becoming a bigger and bigger thing, and I think it's an exciting space to be in. So yeah, that's a brief journey for me.
Thank you so much. So I'm hearing a lot of pivoting, a lot of growing, taking opportunities, and a lot of traveling. So a lot of people taking on APJ roles or moving countries, and that's really inspirational for all of us here. Now, I want to flick back over to you, Catherine. You talked about, you know, going out on your own and starting your own business. And this session's about learning. And, you know, one of those things is around risk taking. So can you elaborate a little bit for us around when you did decide to go out on your own, you know, how you evaluated those risks and, you know, how did you get to that point? Because I think that's really valuable, even if they're little risks that we take.
Yeah, look, it's interesting what Ben was saying. So I think for me that I'd been 7 years at Oracle when it was a time to make a change. It was just so obvious to me that it was time to make a change. I think the thing that I got questions about was why would you jump from a solid set career into something that isn't defined, and where is your thinking at? To me, it was just an obvious direction to take, and there was something quite technically intriguing about where I was heading. I think I did, through that process of working for myself, get clarity about what I did and didn't want to do within a job. So I came to the end of that, you know, running my own business, very clear that actually that wasn't something that I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And I value the structures that come with being employed by an organization. There are lots of things when you are running your own business that, you know, there are great freedoms that come with that, but there are also challenges. And for me, it was about that period of time was really good. It formed the foundations of a lot of the learnings and things that I base my decisions on today. But it also clarified for me that actually it was a pathway that I actually didn't really want to continue on for the rest of my working career. So both points were decision points, to jump on or to jump off, and then to actually go, actually, I'm going to jump back on again now. Because I value having structure around me and being able to, the doors that open from actually sitting within an organization was something that I actually established I valued.
Yeah, interesting. Flicking over to you, Roz, on a similar theme, you spoke to me a little bit about risk-taking, being opportunistic, and something you called deliberate planning. So can you elaborate a little bit for us around what you mean by deliberate planning or being opportunistic?
Yeah, that's so true, right? And I think when I reflect on that, a lot of that's about the stage of your career. So I think earlier in your career, you'll probably have a slightly higher risk profile. You're able to be more opportunistic. It's about looking at those opportunities and being willing to take them, right? So I always talk about I'll hire attitude over aptitude every time, right? So the people who are hungry and who are looking for opportunities and who are looking to engage in new conversations, that tends to happen earlier in your career. And I think as you get through that and you do some learning, you start to become more deliberate. Okay, I've figured out what I don't want. I've learned some things about the different types of risk profile. And I'll give you an example because I've done a few different things in that area. So one type of risk, like Catherine talked about, is backing yourself and going consulting. So I did that for a while, but you've got to remember clients are paying for your expertise. So there's a lot less time for your development and growth. You have to work harder at that, right? As opposed to taking a risk and going to work for a startup that Ben was talking about. So the thrill of building something new and the excitement of possibilities and really sort of looking at what the potential is for growth and outcomes versus going and being at a large company where you have more solid structures, more frameworks to work within and scaffolding to grow. They invest in you. You have access to lots of people. So if I think about the sort of match of opportunity and career, it is more likely that those types of risks that you take lend themselves to the earlier ones, more opportunistic, more growth-oriented, startup-y, versus you've learnt some expertise, you now might back yourself by going consulting versus a different type of risk profile that you have slightly later in your career. And I think as I've gone through those stages, I note that I'm being much more deliberate now in my sort of goal setting. And I've just finished a 10-year goal setting plan that I've realised, and I'm in the middle of doing my next 10 years, which sounds a bit awful, but sort of worked. So happy to talk to you about anything to do with planning. But yeah, that's what my deliberate versus opportunistic sort of profile discussion was about.
Yeah, if we have time, I'm going to get back to your next 10 years because I think it's going to be quite interesting. Now, talking to you, Irina, you spoke to me a little bit around having your career planned out as well in your mind. In hindsight and retrospect of where you are now, can you elaborate on a job you didn't get or a company that you may have left, something that didn't sort of work out the way you planned?
Yeah, so I think almost ironically, the majority of things that were really well planned for me did not work out. And in retrospect, some of those were gifts. In retrospect, some of them maybe I'm still bitter about. We don't know. No, I think the first kind of big one that, and I only recently, it was put in perspective for me. I was by myself. It was the one big achievement I had during COVID is this all kind of clicked in. But I was a double major in psychology and international affairs in undergraduate. And I was very focused on national security. And after kind of college and law school and was it going to be a law firm or not and where I was going to go, I was really, really convinced that I was going to be working in national security. Like went pretty far with the process with the FBI, the CIA, the you know, foreign service in the United States. I was going to be a diplomat. That I was very, it was going to be national security. It was going to be a global role. That's what I was going to do. And there were a variety of elements that kind of played into that, where obviously that's not the direction I went into. And one of the things that clicked relatively recently is how challenging some of those roles would have been for me, given my values and given my desire to kind of have a strong opinion that may not go in the direction with others sometimes. So for example, when I kind of look back now on, let's say I did get that, pursue that role fully at the CIA, and I was working at the CIA and had a president who shall not be named, but whose politics I vehemently disagreed with and thought was a potential danger to national security, you're still in a particular kind of pegging order, right? You're taking direction. And so that was kind of the first time, literally 10 years later, that I was like, oh, it's okay that that's not where I ended up. And that's not how that went. But I think it's so difficult to, when you're have your heart set on something, be it a career choice or a friendship or a hobby or whatever else, it is so difficult to have the perspective of whether or not big picture it's the right thing, whether or not it perfectly aligns with your values and all of that. And so I know there will be several folks after this conversation that will think that I'm secretly in the CIA, and the best cover that I could come up with is, I didn't get the job in the CIA, but I didn't. And in retrospect, much as I think it would have been fascinating, I also think it worked out absolutely for the best, putting me on the path where I am now in a role that is very aligned with my values.
So I'm happy you didn't become a spy, because then we wouldn't have met.
But how fun would that have been?
Yeah, I can imagine. But yes, some of those presidents will remain nameless. Ben, you also were talking to me about a company you may have left or a job you didn't get early on in your career. Can you elaborate a little bit for us? You know, might not be a spy as well, but can you tell us a little bit about? Yeah, I won't paraphrase what you said to me, but we'll see if it comes out.
Yeah. Firstly, we can't be sure Irina's not a spy, so I think let's all just be conscious of that. But no, I think for me it's very similar actually to what Irina was saying, in the sense that, yeah, my first job, I kind of rushed into it. I thought, you know, I've got a business degree, management consulting, I'll get good broad experience. But the reality of what that job looked like was quite soul destroying, to be quite frank. And there was this real like trigger moment for me where it was back in the UK where I'm from, and it was a radiator manufacturer. So Australians don't really know what radiators are a lot of the time, but it's like the most boring kind of home appliance you can think of. It's like it's basically a white panel that fills with hot water and warms your home up. It's like central heating. They're great, by the way. I miss them. But basically the firm was struggling. Lots of other types of heating were becoming more popular. And the consulting project I was brought in to work on was effectively a cost-cutting exercise. And it was literally me as a sort of 22-year-old looking at spreadsheet of not names, but real people and who they could fire quickest and in what order. And it was just like, what am I doing with my life? So yeah, that was a real moment of reflection and thinking about what should I do next. And lucky to find a consulting job with a bit more meaning, a bit more purpose around this growing trend of CSR and social impact. But yeah, I did take a sideways step and definitely a backward step in terms of pay and stuff like that. So I had to build up my career for a second time, but don't regret it at all. And in fact, kind of put me on a trajectory in my career in this really interesting, different world that I didn't guess I'd be in.
Yeah, I think if something's soul destroying, quote unquote, we probably don't want to be doing that every day. Now, I wanted to flick back over to Catherine. You talked a little bit about your management that you've had throughout your career, male, female, and I often talk about sponsors and mentors and mentees. So can you give us a little bit of an insight into your role within that sort of mentoring mentee structure, and also as a leader, people leader, and the importance to you?
So I think I've been on the I've been the beneficiary of mentorship throughout my career, not a formal process in the way we talk about it today, but as I've come through, every company that I've worked in, I've had experiences with management that have enabled me to extend my skills. These days, mentorship means something slightly different to me. So obviously, so I feel like I am in a position of privilege. And so I use that position of privilege in terms of having mentees of various sorts across the globe. So Japan, America, and here in Australia. The other thing that's coming up that I find quite interesting at the moment, I'm hearing talk about reverse mentorship. And then the understanding of what reverse mentorship actually means and what a business is trying to achieve with that. So a reverse mentor arrangement is where you would take a senior person and map them to a younger person of a minority. Or it doesn't have to be younger, just maybe a lesser experienced, but the learning pattern is for the senior person, not for the more junior person. And it's to help senior management understand better what it is like to be a minority within a business. And I think that piece, Brad was talking about tech for good. I think one of the things that VMware is doing is, trying to understand what it does feel like to be a minority of various different sorts and working with that in a mentorship sort of role. So, yeah, for me, I think mentorship is a natural forming of different relationships with people across a whole wide range of experiences. And it's something I'd certainly encourage anybody who's entering a career to look for. I had one of my grads reach out to me the other day, and she said, she and I'd had one conversation, but she said, look, do you mind? Can I have half an hour once a month? And that was all she needed to do. She felt like that it was a big ask, and it's like, it's no ask at all. Put it in my diary and it's fine. We'll move on from there and we'll see how it goes. So I would encourage everybody who, has that thought, just reach out and ask. If there is somebody that you think, I'd really like to be able to spend time with that person and understand a little bit about what they understand, then the best way to make that happen is to ask.
Very good advice. You don't ask, you don't get. Roz, moving on to yourself, you also talked to me a lot about mentoring, and even as early as, talking to people from as early on as high school. So can you give us your take on that and how you approach that for yourself?
Yeah, and I love Catherine's message. I have a thing I say often, which is just always be learning. It doesn't matter which role you're in or who you're working with, up or down, always be learning. And I think one of the challenges large organizations have, and I've worked as you guys have for many large organizations, is often they have this saying around the highest paid person's opinion in the room, and that's just what happens. That's how decisions get made. And I think if organizations, and VMware works really hard at this, looks to gather and learn opinions from its diverse community of people, it becomes a better organization, right? And to your point, Christine, I think in working with school kids now, STEM and early uni entrants as well, and being a girl from the country, I grew up very aspirational, getting to the big city, getting into my job. And I was a pretty average student. I really hugged that middle lane between not too great and not at the bottom, but average was good, and particularly all the school stuff. And what I've learnt is if you look at the top 10 skills required for success over the next, I think it's by 2026 and up to sort of 2030, so it's not that far away, they are things like cognitive flexibility, problem solving, creative thinking, empathy, presentation skills, right? Not one of those things is a subject that's taught in school. So one of the key messages you need to, and the conversation, the dialogue with these hungry kids coming up through school is, it's okay if you're not necessarily great at all your STEM, or you haven't chosen STEM subjects, or you don't know what you're going to do. Be curious, be empathetic, challenge yourself, learn to sort of foster these other skills that we as business leaders and owners and employers know we need that aren't taught in schools. And that is what will actually help you have a more successful career.
Yeah, very wise. Arena, this takes me, the ABL, always be learning, takes me over to what we discussed yesterday. So maybe you can take us through what you look for when you are choosing a role or are choosing an employer, like what's important for you.
Sure. So I think it's actually quite similar to what Roz was getting at in terms of learning and prioritizing that. So thus far, and it's not just the company that you work for, but a particular role, a project within your role, whatever it is, I have to date really prioritized the learning opportunity of a role as opposed to, say, the title or the direct compensation associated with that. Within reason, my dog needs to get fed and taken care of. So there are certain bareline minimums, but I would prioritize a role where the learning opportunity is greater, but it makes a bit less money than a role where I really feel like I may stagnate, but the money is a bit better. And what really drives that for me is, in part, I think it's really an investment in yourself, because no matter where you are, what role you're doing, any skills that you develop, any insights that you learn, that continue, to Roz's point, that continued development of EQ and empathy, to Catherine's point, the opportunity to work with new people and get different perspectives, all of that stays with you. The titles change, the compensation changes, the company you work for changes, but all of that you take with you as part of who you are and your skill set. And so to me, the prioritization on learning isn't just kind of the short term and how does it make you more efficient in your role. I think holistically, it makes you better professional. Sounds like a really weird things to say, but I think it makes you a more, maybe the better way to put it is a diversified individual, both at work and outside of work, because you're gathering all those perspectives, all those learnings, and they're yours. It's kind of, no one can really take that away from you. And so you have that with you no matter what you choose to do thereafter.
A better human, Arena.
I thought about that, but then I was like, "Ooh, are we judging people by how much they learn?" I don't know, but that's essentially. I agree, Roz. That's essentially kind of where I was going with it, because I think who we are is made up of our experiences and our interactions with others, and so all of that you not only take with you, but then have the opportunity to pass on to others and continue spreading. And I think that's really, to me personally, more important than a few extra RSUs. I know that comes from a position of privilege now where I am a bit more comfortable in my career. But I assure you, that's not how things started, as you heard, since I was waitressing and had student loans in the hundreds of thousands, because the US does things a bit differently. And even then, I see it as a long-term investment. To the extent that you can kind of balance that out, it's worth it.
Yeah, I'd really like to jump in there for a second, because I think what Arena's talking about, this building a richer tapestry that is you, is not necessarily about employment either. Like when you think about your career, it's the bringing together of a whole bunch of experiences and learnings over the period of time that you are, working to earn something. I spent some time in between jobs when I was sort of consulting. I started a charity, and I started and launched this charity. It's taught me an awful lot about not only the mechanics of forming an organisation, a charitable organisation, financially, compliance-wise, but I had to bring together a committee. I had to figure out how to bring industry along, find sponsors, hold and deliver events, distribute those the funding that we had acquired from our donors, and that taught me probably more in a single few year period of running that than actually any of the jobs that I have had. And I think, you know, find a body of work, find something you're passionate about, build that into the rich tapestry that is you, and you will grow, and therefore employers love that, and your career grows because of that, and it does make you a better human.
I think it's time for a shameless plug right here. I think it's really great that everyone is here learning and taking on something new. If you are lost for things to do and you would like to form a part of a great volunteer organization, we always have roles and experience in lots of different things. So if you are interested, Girls in Tech do take on volunteers, and you can pad your time with that while you find your side hustle or your next outlet or your charity or whatever it is that you'd like to start. But it is a big congratulations that you are here, because you're all learning, and that's what brought you here tonight. We're almost there, guys. We're almost at the top of the hour. I just wanted to flick over to Ben. I want to quote you because you came up with some really good stuff, and I hope you're writing a book at some point. But you said to me, when you talked about what your career and what you love, you said, work backwards from the things that you enjoy, be experimental, and connect the dots. And I think that's a really nice summary of where you are today. And we did talk a lot about, you know, these non-technical roles, or roles that don't seem like they're technical in tech organizations. And I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit around how you choose a company and a program or programs within the place that you work, especially within CSR. And then also maybe a little bit about, you know, what Finder does to give other people opportunity to be part of those programs as part of their role, just to give us some context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to echo what everyone else has been saying, I love that idea of that kind of rich tapestry of yourself, because that is life. That gives you not just your career, and it's all these different things. And yeah, I think I always think everyone's career makes more sense when you look backwards and you go, oh yeah, I did that, and then I did this, and I do that now, and I learned about this over here, and you go, and actually going backwards, you go, oh, it kind of all makes sense now. But in those moments, you're just kind of going, oh, this is interesting, I'll try that, or this is a new little thing, and it's taking up my time. It's not really my core role, but I really like it, so I'm going to keep doing it. And maybe you do it a bit on the side of your job or whatever it is. And I think that can be super powerful. And I think like there's definitely, I think probably all the organizations on this call today are like it, where, you know, definitely at Finder, you can try new things. Like no one's stopping you going, oh, actually, I'm interested in what you're doing over here. As long as you're still doing your day job and you can deliver on it. There's lots of opportunities. I think my world is a big example of that. Like everyone is interested in CSR. Everyone thinks that they want a career doing, you know, social impact, environmental impact stuff. And people go, how do I get into it? And I'm like, well, who does it at your organization now? Like go and speak to them and volunteer. Like I need help. I need people to come and say, hello, can I help? Can I do a little bit of this for you? Can I do a little bit of that for whoever? And just volunteer your time, learn stuff, get your hands dirty, try things out, and then kind of connect those dots and work your way forward. Because yeah, like you might not think there's a role like this at a company like Finder, but there's some really interesting stuff that we've been doing. And I think particularly, you know, we're a comparison engine, and we help people make decisions around kind of quite boring stuff, like who they bank with and what insurance provider they should get. But what a lot of the work I've been doing in the last year or two is looking at how we add a kind of environmental lens onto those decisions as well, which are the greener like options. What's the greenest bank? Who do I switch to? So we've launched what we call the Finder Green Awards, which is another shameless plug. But yeah, you like plugging that in and having another layer on our tech, and it's all done at the kind of product database level. So I can't do that. I'm not a technical person, but I work very closely with our engineers around how we structure our databases and make sure we're capturing not just, you know, what's the best interest rate, but also what's the greenest option for you as a provider that cares about the planet. So yeah, I think, yeah, try stuff out and volunteer yourself. You might be surprised how easily you can be doing the thing in your company you most want to be doing by just going and saying, hey, can I help? I know it's not my job, but I've got a bit of time and I'm happy to do it beyond my normal job.
Yeah, I really love the Finder Green Awards and things like that. And I would say something that I take out of my career is, you volunteer for something here and there, and then next minute you get dragged onto a project because you're the subject matter expert in that thing. So opportunities present themselves to you if you volunteer for enough things. Now, we're going to do one more circle around the panel. And in the spirit of the Olympics and sports, I wanted to sort of touch on what we do outside of work that helps us a little bit. Inside of work, everyone will know that I'm always doing a billion different things. I like to take up lots of new hobbies. My latest one is freediving. So shout out to Bella, who taught me how to do that just recently. We'll kick off with Irina, and then we'll go around a little bit about, what's something that you do outside of work. I mean, I could name quite a few. And how does that impact on what you take into your day-to-day?
Sure. So I don't know. I think the correct answer here is I have found a way to really disengage and unwind on a daily basis. The reality of it is, even though I do yoga daily, my Shavasana is an excellent brainstorming session as opposed to the meditation it's supposed to be. So I'm not the example for other people to kind of try to replicate. But I think what I have found to be kind of effective is, even if I'm not super consistent or awesome in managing it on a day-to-day, I have found a system that really works where it comes to a point where, for example, right now is quarter end for Salesforce. And so things can get pretty heavy for folks as everyone's moving to a common target in terms of closing transactions. We get busier. And I found that one quarter end, I had a large deal that closed, and for about a week afterwards, I was waking up still problem solving for issues in that document, even though the transaction had closed. And I ended up going to a surf camp in Bali and basically exhausting my body into getting my mind to follow suit. And I'm not saying that that is the way to do it, but I will say it was very effective. So I'm not saying it's the best model for everyone, but I found that to really work because you're so focused on the activity in that moment. I assure you, as I was looking down a wave that I had no business being on, I certainly was not thinking about limitation of liability.
Well, I'm not going to judge you. I took my career sabbatical and went on a surf camp in Bali. So, there's got to be something to that. Roz, something we also share a passion for, something that I do as well, ocean swimming. I saw an article actually about you. I Googled you and saw an article about ocean swimming. So take us a little bit through that, what that brings to the table for you as a person, your work persona, and your outside of work.
Yeah, well, we are passionate about ocean. It's very hard to not be passionate about ocean swimming. It's an extraordinary combination of biophilia from hanging around in the marine life, the meditation of the breathing, the exercise, the being in the cool water. So I swim without a wetsuit during winter down at Manly. As Brad mentioned, we were talking about earlier, I nearly ran him over one day. I think the thing for me is that you have to find the thing that gives you peace outside of work, the thing that brings that balance. And I had 3 children under 4 at one point, had a job where I traveled across Asia Pacific. You need to be able to find something that's sustainable. You need something that fills your soul with joy. And the combination of swimming with amazing people, beautiful women that I hang out with, and having that combination of an exercise, a pastime that brings all of those things together in 1.5 hour a day that feels like a holiday every day, that is the thing you need to find, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And yeah, that's why ocean swimming is so perfect for me.
I love that. I love getting in the water with no wetsuit in winter. I am just as mad. Okay.
We are mad.
Ben, I'm not even going to try to explain this one, but please walk us through what is korfball and your experiences. Am I wrong to say you were the captain of the British team nationally? Yeah. Okay. Take us through what this is and what you learned from this wonderful sport that I just learned about.
Yeah. So korfball, K-O-R-F ball. It's Dutch for basket. So a korf is a basket in Dutch. It's kind of like basketball, netball. But I think the thing that what is unique to it, as far as I'm aware, is it's always exclusively mixed gender. So it's always 50% male, 50% female players on the court at every level, in every format it's played in. So, I mean, it's been an amazing sport for me, just in terms of traveling the world, and it's actually in the World Games, which is it's for Olympic recognized sports that aren't in the Olympics. So it's this kind of very like unusual alternative Olympics. If you can ever go to a World Games, check it out. Stuff like dragon boating and underwater hockey and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. But yeah, I think I definitely learned a lot about gender in doing that. And then, like, kind of the interesting thing about the sport is it's always like the highest level, it's always male, female, perfectly balanced. But male players only mock male players and female players mock female players. So those kind of physical disparities that might happen in sport don't really happen, because it's everyone's paired off. And the outcome is often that the players with the top female players win the game. So actually, it's a very strong focus on male players trying to get the best out of female players and get them scoring the goals to win the game. So yeah, I love sport in general, but it's been a great experience for me, and particularly the gender disparity that still exists in sport across the board. I think it's a really interesting model of, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have male and female sports. Maybe we should do it all together, kind of like we do in the workplace, and then talk about like equity and stuff once we're all in the same court. But having a women's soccer game, that's say football, but women's soccer game and a men's soccer game, and you have to choose one to watch. I think you kind of create these dilemmas that we don't necessarily need.
Yeah, fascinating, and great shout out who just Googled korfball there from Roz. Okay, and to finish us off, Catherine, we already talked about cycling. Tell us a little bit about, something else, or some of the endurance sports and things that you do, because I found them quite interesting. And then we'll kick over to Q&A.
Yeah, cycling is the thing that I think I've done the most, but I spent 10 years doing triathlon. So when we moved from New Zealand to Australia, it was a really good way to make connections. So for me, sport's about disconnecting and connecting. And so, yeah, we moved to Australia. For whatever reason, in that process, I qualified for the New Zealand team to go to China to race triathlon. And so suddenly I felt the need to actually do some training and work out how to do the sport of triathlon, because up until then I didn't. And so I spent the next 10 years racing different lengths of triathlon, from the short distance through to the full Ironman distance at Kona, off-road, on-road, anywhere that it would take me, any country that we could travel to, Canada, China, America, yada, yada, yada. It is about it. It's about finding that space within that time where you get time out. So I agree with Roz. It's like you need to find whatever that thing is to actually complement the things that you do at work. And for me, endurance sport, I learn a lot from endurance sport that I then transfer into the business world, in terms of, business is a long-term game. It's a long game. It's not a short game. And endurance sport, there's a lot to be learned about how you do a long game. So yeah, it's about seeing new countries. It's about being physically very in tune with what's going on, and it's about having fun too. So yeah, and in more recent times, and this is what I am hanging out for when we actually get the borders open. So in 2019, we went to Africa. We took our mountain bikes, we raced them across the plains of Tanzania, and then we climbed them up halfway up Kilimanjaro, which it's the highest freestanding mountain in the world. So that experience was just an amazing experience, yeah, it was just waiting for the borders to open so we can go find another country to go take a bike somewhere or go do a triathlon somewhere. So
very impressive. And I think you did say to me that you also do problem solving. So to Arena's point of not actually just relaxing during Shavasana, you also do a bit of your problem solving while you're out and about, which is good to hear.
Yeah, no, there's nothing like it. You take a mountain bike, for example, where you have to only focus on making sure you stay upright, and you come off the other end of the cycle, and you will find you have solved whatever problem it is that you've been trying to solve for potentially weeks, if days, if not weeks.
Fascinating. If anyone wants to see me, you can watch me walking down Bondi Beach for about 3 hours every morning on conference calls and also problem solving. Now we're going to kick it over to Q&A before we wrap. Thank you all for your patience. So I'm just going to have a quick look to see what's come up. Any burning desires or anything else the speakers want to add while I do that?
I have a question for Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
As a high-powered woman in a successful career, like I always find the phrase Iron Man a bit problematic. Is that a thing in the triathlon world? Is that discussed, and is it being changed?
So does it get discussed? Not that I've ever really noticed. No. Look, I find it interesting, your commentary about the maybe we just put everybody on the same court and then work from there. It's interesting. So the Olympics is about to have the first trans woman compete in the weightlifting. And that's going to create that conversation. I think that's going to push that conversation along a lot, because the question is do we keep that split the way it has been? But on the Ironman thing, no, you do hear people talk about an Iron Woman. It's a brand name in actual fact. So, but no, it's not something that ever seems to get particularly talked about.
I saw a question come in from Kylie on the chat about imposter syndrome, and I thought maybe I'd kick off the conversation around that, because when Christine came to me and said, hey, I'm putting together this panel, do you want to talk about your career? I was like, oh, no. You want these 3 other people that I will refer you to instead. Surely they are going to be better qualified to speak to this than I would be. And so I think imposter syndrome pops up in a variety of different ways. And I think one of the ways that I consistently see it popping up, especially at folks that I've discussed this with at work, is it almost comes from a place of expected humility. Sometimes where we feel like even if we're qualified, there may be someone that is more qualified that could potentially do a better job. And so that person, deserves that opportunity more. I know for me, every time I have certain conversations where it becomes clear that I'm being looked to as an authority or as someone whose perspective would be valued, there's definitely something inside of me that goes, oh, but have you met Catherine or Roz or Ben? They're great. You should go talk to them first and then circle back with me. And I'm sure a lot of folks would have seen the TED Talk that went around in terms of tricking your body into kind of releasing the hormones that are the correct hormones for when you're feeling confident in the right space to make a decision. So if you hold the Superman pose or the Wonder Woman pose for 2 minutes, that taking up space actually tricks your body into thinking that you're feeling really confident, because apparently when we're feeling really good about ourselves, we take up a lot of space. And studies have found that even individuals who have been blind their entire life and have never seen someone throw their hands up when they win something do that instinctively as well. And so I know this may sound potentially silly, but I think that actually does work in terms of at least giving yourself the 2 minutes to really psych yourself up and focus on the experience that you're about to step into, even if you don't believe in the chemical well-being of that experience. But I think similarly, even if you're not able to actually do that, I think the negative self-talk and recognizing it for what it is and responding to it it has a very similar effect. So catching yourself when you tell Christine that she wants someone else for the panel, and kind of talking yourself through why maybe you do have a perspective that's worth sharing. I think that recognition of what you're doing in that moment and slowing it down, it's not a perfect solution, but it has helped me get on the right track.
Very well said. I think I had the same reaction you gave me. I gave Jess Box, our MD, when they asked me to speak at the Girls in Tech conference. I think it was 3 years ago, before I was on the board. I was like, why would anybody want to hear from me? Ridiculous. And it's just stepping into the opportunities and also, holding that space for yourself. Anything else to add on imposter syndrome before I kick it over to one of our other questions? Any of our panelists?
One of the things I tried for a while was just actually running a diary. So just watching myself in terms of where there were places where I would not step up, where I could have. And having run a diary for a period of time and become aware of where I was actually stepping back, where I should or could step forward, really helped me actually work through some of that and be more prepared to step forward. And that opened doors for me that I wasn't expecting to. And I just literally just wrote it in a diary and just kept track of times where I noticed that I actually wasn't stepping forward.
Yeah, good advice. We do have a question that I got through DM from Charmine, and anyone's welcome to answer this. What does resilience look like, and how do you embrace resilience in and out of work? Anyone want to jump in? No.
I think for me, so I talked about endurance, so endurance sport. I think that's where I really got to know resilience when you're, 35 kilometers into a marathon, having ridden a 180K cycle. But then that same resilience that it takes to take the next step is the same that maybe as you're coming into the end of the quarter and you've still got 10 deals still to close and it feels like you're carrying, it's just the next step and the next step and the next step. And it is actually as simple as just not trying to do it all at the same time, just taking, well, what do I do next? What do I do next?
I think that's really good advice. I think from resilience, from my perspective, I've worked in a lot of really big companies and I feel they are always changing. There is always a restructure. There is always a new manager. There is a new product, a new brand, everything always coming at you. If you work in tech, I think when I first started at PayPal, someone pulled me aside and said, every day he feels like a week and every week feels like a month, because it's always changing. So you really just got to embrace that. And I would say that's my personal experience with resilience, having been in big companies thinking, it'll settle down after Christmas or after month end. And it doesn't, which is actually quite fun and why I love it.
I think resilience is a lot about just having purpose. So if you think about all the things, like what is resilience? It's the ability to get back up. Why? Because there's a purpose there. And I think if you can figure out your purpose, I know that I saw Amy put something on about values and purpose and how important they are. I think if you spend some time figuring that out, then resilience starts to be built because you do find the reason to get up every day and you do find the reason to step and find the next thing.
All right, we have one more question before we close off. And this is, and happy for anyone to answer. For those that have gone out on their own or worked in their own side hustles versus working in the times you've worked in a corporate, how do you weigh up your learnings? Like, is there a different tactic around that? I know Rosie's touched on this, but anyone's welcome to jump in with this one.
Well, I'll give you one quick one. One learning I had was don't go out on your own when you're about to do a renovation. There's a world financial crisis and you've got 3 kids under 4. That's a good learning for you. Just put that out there. Anyone else is welcome to comment from there. That's direct learning.
I was told not to go out on my own if it's summertime because if it hits 30 degrees, I won't get anything done. Catherine, you went out on your own. Any final words about learnings? How do you measure those?
Yeah, look, I would say when you're out on your own, work out what it is you're good at and then get other people, outsource the rest of it. Even on your own, you need to actually find your supports. You need to build your team that backs you. I think those are the things. You do that within a business, but it's possibly slightly less structured. But definitely if you're on your own, having those supports around you and thought out makes for a more successful business.
Yeah, well said. Any final words from the remaining panelists before we close off? No. Okay, well, thank you everybody for dialing in and joining us this evening. Again, we couldn't be there in real life, but I hope you really enjoyed taking the time out and listening and learning as we have today. If you are interested in volunteering or getting to know more about Girls in Tech, please either shoot me a note, add me on LinkedIn, and I can direct you to the right channels. Please like, share, put it on LinkedIn. Make sure you tell everybody how much of a great time you had today. And if you've made friends in the chat window, add each other on LinkedIn, because it is all about networking and learning and taking this forward. I'd like to say a big thank you to VMware for sponsoring tonight, and a big, huge thank you to our panelists for taking the time out to be here and share with us all those stories, both personally and professionally. We really do appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great time, guys, and we'll see you at the next one.
Great job, Christine. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks, guys, for
Christine.
coming along.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Thank you, Christine.
Awesome. Hang on, stop recording.